This is a chainsaw, and this is a $200 high-demand bottle of 10-year-old wine from Barolo in Piedmont, Italy. How are they related? Barolo is the site of the infamous Chainsaw Massacre in 1983 that kicked off the Barolo Wine Wars, pitting the Traditionalists, represented by this bottle of Massolino here, this $200 bottle, versus a Modernist led by Elio Altare, the man who wielded the chainsaw. Why would anyone fight over Barolo, especially when the Barolo wine is rumored to taste and smell like tar, nail polish remover, and roses? Why would people love paying hundreds, even thousands of dollars for a single bottle of Barolo wine? It is called King of Wines and even called the Wine of Kings. Why? My name is John Alanis. I'm a certified sommelier, and in this video, I'm going to tell you the unusual story of Barolo wine, the Barolo Chainsaw Massacre in 1983, and the ensuing Barolo Wars viciously fought for 17 years. Then we're going to open this $200 bottle, we're going to taste it, and I am going to drink the whole bottle, and we will find out together if the rumors are really true, if there's really any tar, nail polish remover, or rose in this bottle. And I will give you, at the end, my true whole bottle review. Not a taste, not a glass, a whole bottle review invented by me. So look, I love Barolo wines, and I think you will too. So let's get started and find out together. The story begins with the Nebbiolo grape, the root of all problems in Barolo. It is an early budding, late ripening, thin-skinned grape. And like everything thin-skinned, it has an attitude. It's finicky. Even a few meters in elevation can drastically change the character of the Nebbiolo grape. The name Nebbiolo comes from the nebbia, the fog that comes over Piemonte. It makes it look like the grape is a little bit smoky, a little bit covered with fog. But it's a very difficult grape to grow. Now, Nebbiolo grapes in Barolo, in Piemonte, go back hundreds of years. And they were known as actually sweet grapes. The court of Napoleon actually tasted some of the Nebbiolos from Barolo, and that's where the term the King of Wines, the Wine of Kings, come from. But Barolo really is known as a dry, austere, high tannic, high acid wine, and it really was in 1894 when it started to take on its particular character. That was when Barbaresco got its DOCG, and Barbaresco is a Nebbiolo grape as well. Post-World War II, what happened was that Piemonte in Italy was a source of extreme poverty. So the farmers there would do anything that they could to sell even a tiny bit of their grapes. They would nuke the soils with pesticide. They would compact everything with tractors. They would ferment the wines in these great 1,300-liter body of old Slavonian oak. And often, these body would be in the garage with the tractor, oil, gasoline, pesticides, and so you didn't get really good wine that came out of that. And this went on all the way through the 70s. Now, there were some great traditionalist producers, which we'll talk about in a bit, but for the most part, these small farmers in Barolo would grow their wines and make their wines, and they would sell them to negotiants who would take them out to the market. Elio Altare's father was one of these traditionalists. And Elio Altare was a young man who in the 1970s was inspired, the late 1970s was also inspired by another young man at the time, Angelo Gaja, that they could make better, more approachable wine in Barolo. Because you see, the problem with Barolo, with it being a thin-skinned, high-acid, very tannic grape, fermenting for 30 days, starting with a maceration for 30 days in this huge oak body, it's not even approachable until about 20 years or so. So it can be great after that, but when you're waiting 20 years before you can sell or even drink a wine, it's a little bit hard to make money that way. So what Angelo Gaja did was he went to France to study French winemaking methods. And what he came back was with the idea of not 225, not 1,300-liter bodies, but 225-liter French barriques, where the French aged their Burgundy in, and they aged Bordeaux in as well. And so what he decided to do was, this was in Barbaresco, not in Barolo, what he decided to do was apply French winemaking practices to the Nebbiolo grape so that it would become softer, more approachable, and drinkable earlier. Shortened maceration, started using rotary fermenters. It was a completely different style. Elio Altare, in 1983, took it a step further. He got sick and tired of seeing these rancid wines come out of his father's gigantic body. So what he did was he took a chainsaw. He cut down all the fruit trees, and he cut up that rancid old body. The story is told that his father was sort of this great wine producer. That's actually not true. That body absolutely needed to go. There were no cleaning practices. It was right next to a tractor. It had 100 years of exhaust in it. It just wasn't any good. So Elio Altare took a chainsaw to it, cut down the rancid fruit trees, cut up the body, and decided to start anew using French winemaking practices. His father was so upset by this that he disowned him, cut him completely out of the well. But Elio Altare was not deterred. What he decided to do was he would lease the property back from his sister, and he would use the techniques that he learned in France to create a whole new style of Barolo wine. Now, Elio Altare, taking a chainsaw to his father's body, the 1983 Barolo Chainsaw Massacre, kicked off what was called the Barolo Wars, the Traditionalists versus the Modernists, the Barolo Boys versus the Traditionalists. And there were several Barolo Boys. The Barolo Boys were Elio Altare, Domenico Clarico, Luciano Sandroni, Renato Carino, and Enrico Scavino. They believed in using the new modern practices they used in French winemaking. What they wanted to do was they wanted to create a style of Barolo that was accessible sooner. You didn't have to wait 20 years to be able to drink the wine. You would get more of an expression of fruit. The tannins would be softer. There would be more aromatics. And so that what they would do was they would use 225-liter French barriques instead of body. There would be shorter macerations, so you didn't extract such harsh tannins. You would use rotary fermenters, and the wines would be approachable in 7 to 10 years. The Traditionalists, who were led by Bruno Giacosa, fantastic producer, Giacomo Conterno, and Bartolo Mascaroli, struck back. But they said that this style was not Barolo, that you didn't get any of the elegance from it, that yes, that you had to wait for a long time, but after 20 or so years, when the fruit began to express itself and become in line with the harsh tannins, it could only be softened with time, with the high acid, it could only integrate with the fruit aromas, it would only show up after time. That was true Barolo. And this war was on, and the fight was vicious. The Barolo Boys were aided by the Times. That was when the Robert Parker Steakhouse wine craze in the 90s really started to happen. And the Barolo Boys were feted for the new style of wine. It was fuller bodied. It was fruitier. It was bigger. It was bolder. It was everything that Robert Parker wanted in his wine. And so they became the toast of the town, the toast of Italy, the boys that say Barolo. But the Traditionalists weren't going to go away easy. They came back with, no, our wines are more pure. Our wines are more elegant. We will only age these in bodies with longer macerations to extract the tannin, to express the terroir like it should be. This is only true Barolo. What they make may be made with the Nebbiolo grape, but it is not true Barolo. And this fight got very vicious and very nasty for a very long time. So who won the Barolo Wars? Was there a winner? Was there a loser? Well, what tends to happen in these wine wars after time is this, is the young guys tend to get a little bit older, and the older guys, the Traditionalists, begin to look and taste their wine that's been around for a decade or more now, and say, you know what, this isn't bad stuff after all. Okay, it's not our traditional Barolo, but maybe it's a new style of Barolo. So the people who won the vicious Barolo Wars, which was started by the Barolo Chainsaw Massacre of 1983, were us, the wine-drinking public. Because now what has happened is, well, we still have Traditionalists like Massolini. They're now using some of the techniques that were pioneered by the Barolo Boys. Maybe they don't do a 30-day maceration, but they don't do a 7 to 10-day. It's kind of halfway in between. They may use some rotary fermentation. They may use some stainless steel tank. They're still making Barolo in their own Traditionalist style, but they're using some of the modern techniques to get a better expression of it. Whereas Elio Altare and the Barolo Boys are still making wine in their style, which is fruitier, softer, more approachable earlier. Now, for a bottle of Elio Altare, you can pay $300 or so. But for a bottle of Bruno Giacosa, you can pay up to $1,000 or so. So who won? the wine-loving public, including you, including me, won. Because now, instead of one style of Barolo produced in rancid old vats, we have two wonderful styles that we can enjoy, and each is a unique expression of Barolo. So, let's have a taste of Barolo here. So, one of the things that defines traditional Barolo on the nose is, yes, like I mentioned in the beginning, tar, rose, and nail polish remover. Now, when I say nail polish remover, it's actually what's called VA, volatile acidity. And VA can come across differently to different people. Some people can experience it as nail polish remover, but some people, like me, experience it as balsamic. VA, volatile acidity, is considered a fault in wine by some people, but to others, like me, it is considered an essential part, an integral part of some wines, especially Italian wines, and especially Barolo. Now, this one right here, this is a Massolino 2015. It is a Riserva. So the regulations for a Barolo Normale, it has to be 18 months in oak, aged 38 months total in bottle. For a Riserva, it has to be aged 2 more years. So this has been in the bottle 62 months before it was released. 10 years is right when we're starting to enter the drinking window for a fine Barolo, for a traditional style Barolo. But this isn't one that we're going to have to wait 20 or even 30 years for. This is one that we can enjoy now, thanks to Elio Altare and his chainsaw, because they've integrated enough of his winemaking techniques here to make this wine approachable and enjoyable merely after a 10-year wait. Now, I'm going to tell you something very interesting, a little trivia about Barolo, which is very interesting. Two things. One, Barolos age in reverse, meaning that the fruit comes out as the wine ages. In most wines, the fruit tends to fade over time while tertiary flavors come out. So Barolos age in reverse. And there's one more neat bonus that you get with a beautiful aged Barolo. We're probably not going to see it in this one. When they get around 30 years or so, they turn orange. Yep, they're not an orange wine, but they turn orange, and they can be some of the most absolutely magnificent wines ever. They're very complex. You get licorice, you get leather, you get truffle, you get earth, you get herbs, you get raspberry, you get maybe a little pomegranate, you get cranberry, you get cherry. What makes Barolo, both Elio Altare style and Bruno Giacosa style, so magnificent is their complexity. These are not simple, quaffable wines. These are wines that you think about. These are wines that you brood over. These are wines that you contemplate. And so what we are going to do with this is I am going to open this bottle, and we are going to give it a try this is a Syrah glass, but it is also a Nebbiolo glass. It's a tulip shape. It has enough of a surface area for the wine to begin to open up, interact with the oxygen, but it also it's a little bit concave, it narrows at the top. So what that does is that concentrates the aromas so that when I nose it, I can get those signature flavors of a beautiful Barolo that I love. It's a contradictory wine. I want tar, I want even nail polish remover, although we'll call it balsamic, and I want rose. I want a lot of rose petals on that. And then when I taste it, I want those beautiful fruits. Now, the other thing about Barolo that I'm going to tell you is really interesting. If you ever want to have fun with someone that's a Merlot drinker and is not used to an extremely high tannin wine, is they are very tannic. And so what tannins do is they make the inside of your lips, where it feels drying around it, but it makes your mouth pucker. And so in the best tans, what they can do, they'll pucker your mouth, they'll pucker your teeth, they'll pucker your tongue, they'll pucker your throat. Ooh, it's an experience. But that goes very well with beef and fatty meats. Tannins bind to the proteins and go very, very well with it. But what they also do is they give the wine structure. And so all those beautiful aromas and flavors that I talked about, tar, nail polish remover, roses, they all integrate very well with the tannin. It's just almost like it's a spine, it's a backbone. It gives the wine structure and layer as you go through it. So what we are going to do, looks like we have a beautiful, fantastic cork here, is we're going to take a taste of this Barolo. And I'm going to tell you something interesting right before I pronounce it. You can almost always tell, you don't always want to get fooled by sight, but Barolos are some of the ugliest wines you're ever going to see. They literally look like rust water in the glass. Ugly garnet is how I describe it. And so Barolos, to me, are wines that are the ultimate contradiction. When you lay out the tasting notes and the sight and the aromas, people look at that and say, my God, that must be some of the nastiest stuff to ever put in your mouth. Oh, but when you taste it and when you go through it and when you see how all those wonderful ingredients come together, magic happens. So if we have a look at this, yep, we can see that is not a particularly good looking color in there. I can see a tiny bit of orange, and it's a little bit ruby, but yeah, it's got that beautiful Nebbiolo color to it. Probably a little bit darker than a lot of Nebbiolos, and there it is on the nose. Yep, I get that tar, it jumps right out to me. I get balsamic, a lot of balsamic on this. Wow, there's just an indescribable, there's a lot of leather going on in there. Certainly get the fruits, but that's to be expected. Raspberry, maybe a few red cherries on there. But with Barolo, I'm always looking for the non-fruit characteristics because that's what really defines its wine. The fruit kind of supports it and backs it up. Mm. 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 Wow. The biggest thing that I'm getting out of this right now is leather. It's think of leather with cherries, raspberries, dried herbs, roses on top of the leather, a little bit of balsamic, a little bit of tar on there, but not too much. This wine just, it's like a fine leather. That's what I'm going to get out of it. And what's wonderful about these Barolo wines is how they tend to evolve as you go through the bottle. So on my first sip right here, I'm going to give this a 96 rating. I expect that this may get to a 98-point rating. However, what tends to happen is why we love to do whole bottle reviews, is sometimes you go through a bottle and it doesn't match up to the first sip. It teases you, but it doesn't please. And sometimes it gets even better. So my prediction based on one wonderful sip of this Barolo Riserva and all this wonderful leather is that this is going to go from an initial sip score of 96 points to a whole bottle review of 98 points. Am I right? Am I wrong? Tune in, and as soon as I'm recovered with my hangover, I will give you my whole bottle review. I'm back, fully recovered from my hangover, and ready to give you my whole bottle review of the Massolino Barolo Riserva 2015. Now, I am going to say that this was a magnificent bottle of wine, but I'm going to qualify this review. If you don't like Barolo, you will not like this wine. If you love Barolo, particularly traditionalist style Barolo, you are going to love this wine. So my initial taste and sip review was 96 based on the point that I defined this wine by leather. Before I give you my final whole bottle review score, I want to walk you through what happened as I went through the bottle, because you really can't appreciate a bottle of fine wine until you go through the entire thing to see if it takes you places, to see how it evolves, to see how it changes. So, a couple things about this one. First off, the first sip and the last sip on this bottle were pretty close to the same. And usually that's something I dock a bottle of wine for, because what I want to see, if I'm going to get it up into that magical 98-point rating, I want to see how it's going to evolve and change as I go through the bottle. But in this case, it was actually a benefit, and here's why. Every single time I took a sip, it gave me a different perspective of the wine. This is a Barolo, so it's obviously a high tannin wine. It's going to pucker your mouth, it's going to pucker your throat, it's going to pucker your tongue. It's high acid, so it's going to be tart. So you had those two elements working, and this fine bed of leather that was there throughout the whole bottle that was established when I did my first taste review. Okay. As I went through the bottle, what happened was all of those three elements were present, but then you would have dried herbs show up. Then you would have licorice show up. You'd have a little bit of truffle show up. Of course, you would have the wonderful fruit show up. Predominantly for me in this wine, I got a lot of cranberry. Of course, you're always going to get a little bit of cherry, and I got some raspberry. But here's what I liked about the fruits. The fruits had a very unique character, what I call a Jolly Rancher character. Of course, Jolly Rancher is a candy, and it's sweet. Even the sugar-free stuff is sweetened up. So if you were to take a Jolly Rancher and remove every element of sweetness from it, that was the fruit character in this wine. The fruit character didn't define the wine, but it would pop out here, it would pop out there, it would pop out with some licorice, it would pop out with some truffle, of course it would pop out with some roses on the nose, and of course you got that tar and balsamic that showed up. So what I loved about this wine, it was like a glittering jewel to me. every angle I looked at it from was a little bit different. It caught the light a little bit differently. So each and every sip that I took from this bottle of wine was unique. And so therefore, based on that, I am going to give the Massolino Barolo 2015 a whole bottle review score of 97 points. I don't think it quite crossed into the 98 point where it's magical, but it was a damn fine bottle of wine just based on how every sip changed. Now, I know some of you Barolo lovers are going to tell me this. John, you drank it too young. And look, I'm not going to disagree with you. This was a 2015, it's 2025 now, but I'm 54 years old. I don't want to wait until I'm 74 years old to drink this wonderful bottle of wine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get me 2 more bottles of the Massolino Barolo Riserva 2015. I'll drink another one maybe in 5 years, another one in 10 years. We'll see where it goes. But if I want to get a beautiful bottle of aged Barolo, one that's turned orange, I'm just going to go buy one from 25, 30 years ago, and then I'm going to drink it. I'm an impatient guy at 54. I don't want to have to wait, so I'm going to drink my Barolo now. So the final whole bottle score of 97 points is a bottle I highly recommend if you are a Barolo lover. Now, what's better than a bottle of fine Barolo? What's better than a whole bottle review of a bottle of fine Barolo? A whole bottle review of a bottle of fine Bordeaux. And in my next video, I am going to do a whole bottle review of my favorite left bank Chateau Pontet Canet. So all you have to do to watch it is to click or tap now.